Hi, Scott.
Good morning, Andy. How you doing?
You're great, thanks. Great. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Hey, Andy, Scott, Joe, Joseph.
Joe, you're in there somewhere. Oh, there's Joe.
Yeah, there I am.
Hello. And a Joseph. Where's our fearless leader?
Yeah.
He's probably not busy enough.
You know, I think I saw an email from him saying that he was not going to be at this meeting.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure I did. He was I think he had a hospital appointment, I think.
Hope it's continued good news.
Yeah, no, me too.
Morning, Bob.
Morning, guys.
Morning, Bob.
Do we know is George joining us this week?
Yeah, we were just talking about that, Bob. Andy said that he had sent an email. He's not going to be joining us.
Okay.
I think in the email he said he was going to be with Sid this week and he would miss it.
Well, the beauty is that we never have an agenda, so
Exactly.
we're following that.
Does
anyone have a hot topic?
I guess I'm going to ask, does anybody have an update on the beta release of Clarity?
We're waiting.
There's still going to be a webinar, what, in a couple of days, right?
Yeah, I think it's on Thursday, Steve. Yeah. I talked to George last week. I think it was Thursday, and he had shared that there was it was Wednesday, because he shared Friday or that Thursday last week was something was supposed to be finalized, a couple of significant changes, and then Friday he was supposed to take the final look at it. And then what he shared was that he was going to have a group of us, whatever that means, and however many people that is, send it out and give us access for the beta to give some feedback to him. And then he would compile that feedback and then have a joint meeting to talk further. So that was as of last Wednesday, but things could have changed.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, I think we're all anticipating the release of this product, so we'll see.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely.
Joseph, you weren't the one that's been swearing at him, are you?
No. I mean, I am. You know, there's a lot of anticipation here. Obviously, for some of us, the loss of core value has left a little bit of a hole in some ways. For me, more on the simplicity of marketing side. So I'm kind of looking forward to see what Clarity can do to replace some of that, if not all.
Yeah, Joseph, I'm the exact same place. It's had been my go-to tool for qualifying and also testing level of commitment. You know, if somebody can't take 10 minutes to complete that, then they're probably not going to be really committed to improving their business.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly how we used it.
Oh, the same way. Okay.
Yeah, exactly the same way. If they won't take the assessment, we won't work with them. And it also lets us know if there's a right fit for us as well. Yeah,
exactly, because you know their size and so forth. And I like the addition of the employees being added to the information in Clarity, number of employees, because that's always an important aspect.
So
That's-
Ed Weinke and I were talking yesterday, and the terminology came up, FORD, right? And family, he was trying to trouble remembering. Then I looked
Occupation,
it up. Go ahead.
Recreation and dreams.
morning, Ed.
Good
There he
morning.
is.
Good morning, Ed.
So who's found that to be really successful from a format perspective to guiding the conversation? On the average, does it work? Are they having success? Does something else work for you?
Yeah, I use something else, Joe, when I start a discovery meeting. And I'll just do my routine real quickly. I just say, first thing, how much time do we have, especially if we're going to be in person, which is my preferred. To make sure that I've got a hard stop, and that'll set my pace. And then I simply tell them I'm going to tell a little bit about myself. And then I'm going to ask a whole bunch of questions about you and your business. And then near the end, we'll talk about how we might work together. And this is really about a fit. And then what I start all the time is, and it works really well. I was talking about this with Bob the other day, that my very first thing then is take me through the steps that got you to the point of starting your own business or making that decision to start your own business. And they can go to anywhere, from childhood to, when they actually started. I want to understand their motivation. And then I always add to that, what were your expectations as you're going through this? I'm going to ask you, what were your expectations? Where would it be? And where is it now? And how do you feel about that? And as I said to Bob, if I have like a 90-minute or a 2-hour, typically an hour on a Zoom call, but 2-hour on in person, they may fill 90 minutes with that. Just responding to that. And it's amazing how much information you can get when you just let them talk. So that for me, Joe, I've been using it a long, long time. It just seems to really connect well.
Yeah, in my Vistage practice for always use that. It kind of, what is it you really, really want? You get kind of surfacey, dollars, and eventually you hang on that question. You say, thank you, Scott. What is it you really, really want? And just keep on hanging on that same half an hour, painful at times, but you really kind of get the core of everything. They want to basically, make sure the family's taken care of. And so many of that primeval, primitive stuff, just kind of the whole get down to the core, and then back up. But I do like the idea of when you first started the organization, what was your expectations and where are you today, and have them articulate the gap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of get into that, that right brain side versus left brain in that conversation. I just find I connect at a much better level than if I'm going into the technical aspect.
Part of it,
yeah.
Part of it is we're asked, really to be effective is ask the question that nobody asks them. That, that might, I don't want to say be embarrassing, but it, you really want to make a unforgettable conversation, whether you not go forward or not. It's that ability to not, to go into what most people won't ask, and yet the most important thing for them to understand about themselves too, right?
Yes.
Just FYI, the Ford thing emanated out of the LX Council group.
Okay.
So there's a really different sort of a context and purpose to it. So Ford is just a means to begin to develop some rapport.
So do you use that, Steve, in your practice?
Some, it's situation dependent, but I've in the group folks that have used a lot. They're very complimentary of the process, the technique.
That sounds, it's nice to have an acronym that kind of remind you, kind of walking through the steps, especially in the heat of the moment, to keep you focused, right?
Yeah. Hey, Scott, you need to come up with an acronym.
Yeah. I use a building on that. I use a slightly different approach because I guess what we're talking about here is that we want to have a quick time to value, even in the conversation that we have. And that conversation, we want the client to say, you know, that was a value. I've never really thought about that till now. And even if they don't continue with us, they will remember that they've had a value conversation. They might come back to us later. That value conversation is enshrined within the growth conversation. And I will use the Dan Sullivan questions, the 2 Dan Sullivan questions, to get them thinking about it. And it's also a bit of a qualifier because, you know, owners that can't really articulate an answer to that may not be the sort of right people in terms of their commitment, etc. But one of the other things that I do, and I work with, is I get at their life vision. So I almost start with their life vision, and then it funnels down into their business vision using the Dan Sullivan and DOS. And I ask them 3 questions, and depending on who I'm talking to, I might formalize this in a document for them that we go through together, and then build in 3 columns the answers to these questions. And the questions have some prompts, but essentially the 3 questions are, the 3 most important questions I ask them are, what experiences do they want to have in their lifetime? So what kind of experiences they want to have? How do they want to grow? And the 3rd question is, how do they want to contribute? And as I say, there are some sub-prompt questions for them to think about. And so it helps them articulate that. And then basically I'll say, you know, we don't need to spend hours on this, you know, just looking at it over 15, 20 minutes, what's coming up from your gut. And then we can put them down in 3 columns, which 3 columns under each of those 3 questions. And that gets that introspective process for their end in mind. And then from there, we can say, okay, well, that's your life vision. That's where you're heading to in your life. Now, let's focus in on your business group, which is a big part of your life. So where are you heading with your business? So it's there to here. And of course, that begins to form the why of what they do in terms of their commitment, etc. So that big why begins to begin to be identified. And at the end of that sort of conversation, with questions and following, you know, and like you say, people can talk for some time on those questions. But at the end of that, I've always had a reaction from clients when I ask them, you know, did you find that of value? Always they say it's of immense value, because they've never really thought of it and never really thought of their business in the context of their life and put the 2 together.
Yeah, Andy, I follow in your path. I just wanted to add one thing. One, you know, just a slightly different view of it.
Yeah.
Very often, the people that we're working with have really done nothing else other than really focus on their business their entire life, and they may have been doing this for 40 years.
Yes.
So sometimes these questions are really, can throw them off kilter, and they don't really know how to answer the questions, not because they may not be a good fit. They just haven't really had time to think about it, or they've really never thought of themselves, so to speak. So I actually had some good advice from someone who was a career counselor, a career coach counselor. And he was saying that often people will be very clear in terms of what they don't want.
Yes.
Even though they can't articulate what is that they do want. And so, you know, when you're sitting down with someone, you know, obviously they're sitting with you for a reason. There's something in their life that, in their life or their business that is, you know, prompting them to look for a change. You know, what is it that you're trying to avoid? And that usually can kind of segue into a better conversation in terms of what it is that they actually do want, because often they haven't really thought about it at all.
And you're right with that, Joseph. And from a life coaching point of view, that's a process that I often use. You know, what do you want? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I asked two supplementary questions then. What if you did know what you wanted? What do you want? You know, it's a sort of NLP type technique. And then from there, if they still say, I don't know, I would say, okay, what is it you don't want? And then we work from the opposite of what they do say they don't want, and then we make an assumption. But it's interesting, you know, there are two different ways there. I'm a great fan of Dan Sullivan, and he makes that point that yes, you know, there are people who don't know what they want. It's true, they don't. But those who can articulate, and he uses it as that question for his strategic growth program as a filter. Those who really haven't thought about it, and he gives them time, obviously, he might say, well, maybe they're not quite a good fit to, you know, for moving forward. But yeah, interesting. Both, I see both sides. Yeah, and I've experienced both sides. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, Andy, I have one similar to that. I think it almost touches on the same things, but a little more structured. Once I start with a client as opposed to discover. And if it's, let's say it's two partners or a husband-wife team that own the business, and I do something I call goal posting your business and your life. And the process, very simply, with a series of questions, I start out with 5 years from now, where do you want the business to be? Where do you want relationships to be? Where do you want, what would you like to do, hobbies and interests, and where do you want to be? You had mentioned contribution about spiritual and community. You know, sometimes they want to give back. So I just have them give them some top line for 5 years from now. Just open them up, think a little bit. And then I go to a column that I always ask about. Let's go back in each of those items and ask, why is that important?
Yes.
You know, and I'll go through each of those that they put down. It's really interesting when the partners are doing it separately on a piece of paper, and then we come together. And then I go back and I say, okay, let's look at today. Where are you in all of those things you just wrote down? And it's amazing how that almost illustrates the pain or the desire, you know, where they want to go. And then we talk about 1 year, where do we want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, moving towards that 5. And that becomes a great foundation to get some people aligned. I've had partners break up over that.
Yeah.
You know, they realized they wanted very different things from life and business, and which contributed to their struggle. I've had marriages strengthen with husband and wife teams.
Yes.
Especially when they get in the relationship side.
Yes.
You know, they start to think about their children. They start to think about themselves. You know, I had one couple that's, oh my gosh, 5 years from now, everybody's going to be in college. You know, our 3 kids are out of school, are out of high school. They're going to be out of the house. What are we going to do? Because we're not prepared for that. And you know, it's just fascinating on
have
kind
you
of guiding that thinking for them. Yeah.
Scott, have you scripted that such that you could share that?
Yeah. Actually, yeah, I have a form that I use, and then I have a series of questions under each of those areas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd really be interested to see that, and I can share the life vision process that I use with you. It's scripted. It's a bit more detailed than I've discussed, but I can share that as with you and anybody else who wants to see it.
Andy, how about if we post that on the Coffee Klatch community?
Yes. Okay. I'll post mine.
Yeah, and I'll post mine as well.
Terrific. That's great.
Great. That sounds like a great idea, guys. I know, Andy, you'll send it a little further than Scott, but Scott's half the world across in Colorado anyway.
It gets there. That's the interesting thing.
How does it happen?
Yeah, how does it happen? I don't know. It's magic. Yeah. Star Trek stuff.
Joe, your question, was your question designed to understand how to actually have that conversation, or how to draw the individual into a conversation so that you can kind of clarify and qualify what he wants?
So that was a perfect outcome for what the question was. The one of the things that I draw back on is some of the promptings of, you know, years of marketing and sales closing for top executives. And a lot of it is kind of, you know, we talk in terms of numbers normally, right? So eventually we get to the numbers and we talk about beating your competition and all that kind of go get them. But yet the human part of it is in articulating their dreams and their vision. So no, that was good discussion. I appreciate it. So the follow on is we have 3 or 4 legs of the stool in our relationship and on our product line. You guys have is there talk about that? Are there how many things that in this product offering are there? And when you look at all 3, you have to be present for the value to be there. How do people articulate that on the trying to get someone to move on to a commitment with you? Yes, we made the connection. We've made them unsatisfied with the current situation. Are there 3 or 4 blocks that you use to trying to build to qualify and close the account or move to the next step?
I mean, I'll go first. You're talking really of an engagement process, but essentially mine would look like a qualifying process. And then from the qualifying process, I'm going to move them on into a further discussion. And that's a fairly set piece discussion in, again, a bit more on their business, their current situation, their desired outcomes, the things you've been talking about, their readiness to proceed. I call that Discover Part 1. Discover Part 2, then we look at that life vision and the growth conversation and so on. And then at the end of that discover, there's an element where we've talked about any do they have any concerns about continuing? Are there any parameters we need to take into account in terms of time, etc., etc.? And then essentially, I'm able to say at that stage, proposal. So we're at that stage where, things are going well, they've had value, etc. So there's a proposal that goes, and it's a context proposal, so it's about their context and what we discussed. It would go to them, and I would never leave it with them. I would send it and discuss it, or I would deliver it myself so that we don't get this pregnant pause. And then from there, of course, there's the creating of the plan, and then the last phase is the implementation of the plan. And the creating of the plan was ideal with core value, but in the absence of core value, a series of other health checks in order to be able to develop a plan that we can go back and look at. And then if they agree to that, there's an implementation.
Sure.
That's the sort of how I begin to move them through that funnel, if you like.
And then I'll take a stab at that question.
I mean,
Joe, go ahead, Joseph. Excuse me.
No, go ahead, Scott. I know you got limited time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always start out with the exit plan, classic 3 questions. When do you want, how much will you need? Who do you want to sell to? And when would you like to leave? And just getting into those 3 as we start to talk about it, many times they haven't thought about exiting, but they know they are going to when you say, it's inevitable. And then inevitably that number or the target or the sellability or transferability of the business is where the issues are. And therefore, with core value, as an example on growth drive, that just leads in perfectly to build, the drivers in the business. And showing them the 3 dimensions and without a lot of detail in it, but just talking about predictable is the most important thing. And then you get into cash flow and profits, and then growth, and then transferability. Clients just get that, and that really seems to help quite a bit in closing the prospect, if you will, and then setting my first meeting with them as the follow-up. And then I've got a game plan that I do every time that I basically onboard a new client. Joseph, turn back to you.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that, in many ways, the sales process that I use is the story brand
Yes.
messaging framework. And I think it's just, pretty simple. You're talking about him and they're identifying what their problem is. And you're going through that process. I think, we try and engage too much perhaps in the first initial sets of conversations. We like to talk and show how smart we are. But really, it's just trying to find a way to identify really what their pain points are and trying to get them to commit to a follow-up in that process, whatever that might be for you. It's rare for someone to go to the second stage, let's call it the follow-up call, and then not be fully engaged at that point. Usually at the first go, you'll know if there's something major that's coming up, and you can usually pick it up. I mean, they might say that everyone's got great advice, all these consultants, coaches, everyone's coming up. I hear yesterday, today it's EOS, yesterday it was, scaling up, and the day before that it was whatever it is, they're coming up with all these different things, but, they'll usually, whatever their primary issue for going into a full engagement usually can come up pretty quickly. But again, I use the story brand because I think, I think it was Tony Robbins that says that people do more to avoid pain than they can do to gain pleasure. So they don't want to hear really what the upside is. They just want to know how you're going to solve their problems. So if you're even able to articulate or to work with them to kind of identify what that problem is, you could say, let's have a follow-up, conversation or a call to see how we might be able to address some of those issues. And now at least you've got something to work with to prepare what I would call a very short and powerful presentation that will articulate how you're going to solve their problem.
Thank you. As I think about the report that's going to be the senior manager alignment report that you guys present, or we present, some ways to get through that session without bogging down on details. Is that common for you guys to present that, the analysis on the alignment of the leadership team? Or no?
So I don't use it at all. And
Okay.
the reason I don't use it is it's usually driven top down. So at the end of the day, what the CEO wants and what the CEO wants to accomplish is the primary focus. Whether or not senior management is in alignment or not, I think is a separate issue that needs to be dealt with. The question is whether or not they're willing to come on board. So, like anything else, I look at them as no different than any of the other employees, even if the owner himself is an employee in the company. And that is, everybody wants to know, what's the goal? What is my job? How am I going to be measured? How are you going to measure my performance? And how am I going to be compensated for doing my job? If the owner is able to articulate that in a very clear, crisp way, it's rare for management to balk. And if they do, you already know they don't belong there. You're going to find someone else to replace them. Going through this really long process, I know a lot of people like it. Me personally, I find it takes too much time. And then ends up in a lot of discussions. You end up with, if you have 5-6 people on the management team and each one's got their own views, now throwing and stirring in the pot, all kinds of, off-topic discussions, and, what could be a good solid 20-minute focused, conversation in the meeting can often become a 4 or 5 day, mess. That's just my opinion. I haven't found a lot of success in using it.
I would tend, if you've got 2 founders, it's useful when you have 2 founders working together. But also I use it sometimes as a way of building trust and cohesion within the team. Many management teams are dysfunctional for sure. And yes, we know the CEO has the last call on this, but as a way of building trust and cohesiveness, to look at an alignment and stimulate that conversation, but facilitate it, I think has a part to play. I don't use it all the time, but when I sense there is a lot of dysfunction, I might use that as a trust building process. More or less, I love the 5 dysfunctions of a team, so I follow that Lencioni process, etc. And alignment for me does help in trust building, productive conflict, etc.
That's helpful. Do you want to use this impact piece yet? Have anyone use this tool with the three? This is me recreating it. I'm on my flip chart, but where the original value and then what it could be, and how are you articulating that? And then this is a new tool, is that right? New graphic they came up with, or George has come up with,
Yeah, please.
versus the gap, if you will. I know Ed was just talking about this. So you're able to deliver a number based on the clarity, right? Clarity is going to give us a number on the capacity, growth capacity, the value capacity. Based on that number, you triangulate it onto the board, and then kind of say, okay, what are those things that could be different that we could work on that could eventually be the optimal cash out number or whatever. So is anyone using that currently, and have they experience with that in the sales process? Or is it too new?
I'm not. I was actually just waiting for clarity in hopes to
Okay.
start using it in clarity.
Okay.
For me, it's too new. I haven't used it. I like the idea, but I haven't used it. I need to think about how best to use it.
Yeah, well, maybe it'll come to light on Thursday. We'll have a better clarity, better feel for how's it going to come out of the report. But it seemed like it'd be pretty cool to come back to it on occasion, and continue to measure success along the way. So, okay, thank you.
Maybe I nodded off, but where is that someplace in the archives, Joe?
It was in George's letter to a CEO within the last week or so.
Okay, thanks.
It was a blog of sorts.
Okay.
So
It's
does
a
that
blog post, yeah.
the blog post? Yeah. It was an excerpt from his upcoming book, I guess.
Joe, by the way, just to follow up on that last comment, often I look to private equity firms and see what they do. They're typically looking for maximum growth, and they have limited time, and they also have an unlimited budget often to be able to work with, even though they're ROI focused. But the way they manage executive alignment is that they actually create that communication from the CEO, and then they essentially say, who fits, who doesn't fit, whoever doesn't fit, not willing to conform, goodbye. And then we find a replacement. So they don't really spend too much time trying to build what's called from the inside out alignment. It's really from the top down. So I don't know if that's valuable or not, but I just.
Yeah, early on, getting the CEO to articulate, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and what kind of people we need around us to do that.
Right.
Is what called the story, right? Within the EOS world, but that's like one of the first outcomes of the day two and the session work that really pushes to you put the stake in the ground. This is our core values, and then having them basically, deliver it and to nauseam on where it is. And so that's going to, just by default, everyone understands the core values, and the white blood cells come out and they'll start attacking the cancer. And that's really where you want to kind of have it from peer-to-peer
Sure.
pressure to our push out the bad guy, bad fit, whatnot. So it's certainly a lot less painful for the entrepreneurs who are by nature kind of wimpy. They don't like to deal with conflict. That's why they started a company themselves.
Yeah, well, look, the sore thumbs will come out really quick from
Yeah,
that, but often the
exactly.
challenge isn't that. The challenge is you'll have people that are willing to comply, but they frankly don't have the skill set to execute, which becomes more, more where the work really needs to be done. So I mean,
Sure.
within the context of what we're doing at core value or some of these other tools, I mean, everyone knows you can either use disc approach or various other approaches to kind of clarify in terms of, where they're a good fit, and see if they actually have the skill set or what kind of training is really needed to bring them up to the task.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you can't, then you have to find a replacement. But that's probably, I'm more comfortable with that process because it doesn't become, there's less baggage, let's call it, when you're working with management, there's a lot of baggage there. People are seeing, or I should say, people are expressing their ideas based on the experience they've had with that group or that company up to that point. And
Yeah, you
Familiar
certainly
with
reduce
the-
the drama. I'll go with that, Joe. You reduce the drama if you take that top-down approach. I understand that. But going back to the tool and Joe, and you'll know this, Joe. I love the EOS GWC tool. You get it, want it, capacity to do it tool,
Right.
which is a very quick and reasonably objective way of making sure that you've got the right person in that right role. So you've got the values, and then you've got the GWC tool. I find that very useful, Joe.
Yeah, I use that through the implementing EOS. And is anybody familiar with some of the teaching with the ESOCs and the corporate life cycles and the type of people we need around us during the different stages of growth? It's really interesting when you start looking at a growth curve, and you're talking about initially it's an affair, then you go into a let's see, so if the affair, it's, if it falls apart, but when they actually start having a business moves up, there's an infant stage company, and really what you need to do right here is have a big E and a lot of P, just being able to sell, right? And then it goes to the go-go phase, and then the maturity phase, and then so there's different types of people. I'm not getting into details, it's a lot of details there, but different type of people you need along the way. And as you grow, the ultimate thing is prime. So P, A, I, and E are the letters, but they all stand for various. So P is sales, A is administration, I is integration, and then E is entrepreneurialism. So it when you're talking about Joseph, you're talking about people that don't fit. It usually is something that related to where they are in their life cycle, the growth. Get an example of a startup. One of my clients, business partner, hired his CFO from waste management in a startup. Well, CFO from waste management is, doesn't know startups, right? But so he was way on the A side, but he was kind of shooting down every deal that was going on, because they weren't making money on that single pickup. This is a trash company. And so, some people just aren't wired for that position on the growth curve. But then the company outgrows that, right? So the gunslinger works really well when it's a startup, but when they start to try to get, that classic, what got us here is going to get you there. So intelligibly, we can say it's just a wrong fit because they're not good people, but they're just not wired where we're going to go as an organization. And oftentimes that's the big D in divorce from partners, is that they tend to want to split. They want to split probably about in the cycle about when they go to the go-go to get adolescent, the go-go guy says, I don't want any rules or whatever. And the adolescents, we need to start more A on this P, A, I, and E here. But essentially the divorce typically happens when the partners, one's still pushing the gas, the other one's laying back and want to take the risk off the table. So it's natural. It's the natural breathing. We just got to understand that, how do we approach that with saying it's not you, it's me. But I don't know, it's helpful in the corporate life cycles conversation, trying to get back to what kind of people we need on board.
What was the reference on that, Joe?
Corporate life cycles, I could give you a posting on it.
It's, yeah, a D's
D's,
life
yeah.
cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I see D's life cycle. But you raise a great point. I'm going to show you another tool, which is from the Rewilding group. And this tool is a fabulous aid memoir. And it's a corporate life cycle split into 7 stages. And it's a very comprehensive, and each stage is defined by complexity. Complexity is defined by the number of employees in a company. And it's a very wonderful aid memoir on the people required, the type of leadership required at each stage, what you should focus on in terms of profit, process, people at each stage. What are the holes that you could potentially fall down in at each stage, and what are the imperatives to work on? And it talks about 11 elements within business, and those 11 elements will transfer across to the 3 dimensions of growth, because a business is a business. Why wouldn't it? But it does. And so what I would tend to do, I will always do a corporate life cycle stages of growth check, because if I know the stage of growth, I know the problems and issues they're facing straight away. I know that they're predictable, they're avoidable. And I know what it takes to get to the next level too, in terms of all these dimensions. So I will put the aid memoir in circle, but the reference for this, and it's well worth looking at this, is the Rewild group, REWILD group.com. And they use not a D's, and I like a D's. I like the growth cycle of a D's, but they use another piece of research work. So well worth looking at that, and then having this aid memoir tucked away, just as a quick ready reference in terms of what we should be, the things that we should go into our little pot that we're cooking up for the implementation plan.
Well, in the end, what's really interesting, if you could tell them their story of their business when knowing just very few pieces, and they go into it and say, oh my God, how do you know so much? And it's like, well, because it's so predictable.
Yes,
but you don't understand my business is so unique. Well, no, it's not, but I'll give you that, Yeah, so courtship, infancy, go, adolescence, prime. I'll post, I'll put that connection with on this. There's like an explanation of what's the problems, what's the path, prescription for success, what is normal, what's not normal. So I think that's the other thing important is, what's normal, what's not normal in your life, in your moment of where you are in the life cycle. So they really have to deal with the not normal versus normal, because if the not normal, I don't mean to be too repetitive, but make it as simple as possible for them to understand, let's separate the real issues versus the we're going to have cash usage when they're growing the business. What we don't have, what is not normal, and it's just a really good way to kind of, the owner, they always have the description of the owner of a construction company comes home and he's bought a shopping center on the airplane, just because they're doing so well. And, what are we doing about shopping centers? Nothing, but, seemed like a good deal at the time, right? So we get over top our skis, they get overconfident, and everything they touch turns to gold. Well, obviously that's not always the case, but anyway, soapbox, step off.
No, I think it's very valuable, and a very valuable tool to overlay the stage of growth of businesses at, because as you say, it's as though you've looked into a crystal ball, and it's great from an owner point of view to understand that, and then that can be overlaid within the 3 dimensions of growth to give you a very comprehensive view of a company.
Yep. And, you know, their refusal to let go of a talent that, you know, served them well, but as they move forward, I'm sure this Rewilding,
Rewilding, yeah.
Rewilding.
I'm just posting. You can download the matrix from the website I've given. It's called the Organization Rewilding Stages of Growth Matrix. I like it because a D's is good, and it does give you that normal, abnormal for each stage of growth. But I like this because it's more granular, and it works very well with the 3 dimensions, with the 11 elements, etc. I think it's a great tool just to have in your back pocket. Yeah.
Yep, love it.
I just started mapping the rewild 7 stages across the 3 dimensions and really like the tool.
Well,
But
that would be,
yeah,
that'd be interesting to overlay them. Yeah.
It is, yeah. That the 11 elements of their business. I think they move directly across the 3 dimensions.
yeah.
Nice. Thank you.
Yes, that's why I mean, I like to use the tool. I think it does it much better than a D's, although I like a D's, but I prefer this tool.
Yeah, that's been around since the 70s, you know.
It has, but I think it's still relevant. You know, I like the
Oh,
normal,
yeah.
abnormal stuff,
Yeah.
And so on.
I'll look it up. Thank you.
A real quick question for Ed. Ed, were you able to get your email back up? And
It's back running smoothly and everything after 3 days of chaos. It was amazing at 11:30 at night working with Microsoft. Their technician guided me through cleaning it up and fixing it, and turned out that the whoever infected it put a blocker on so that anytime I thought I wanted to send an email out, it automatically sent out anything from 15 to 20,000 emails
wow,
if you happen to hit send.
yeah,
And soon as they did saw that, they said, oh, look, what they've done is they put a Trojan into your system, selling and sending it out to every email to anybody that you've ever talked to in life, type of thing. Because I got calls from people that I worked with in early 2000s and said, did you send me an email? I mean, we haven't worked together. And I said, not I. That's that mysterious ghost that got into my computer.
can you send me that name you were going to send me?
I will.
Thank you. I gotta go, guys. Been a great conversation.
Yes.
Likewise.
Hey, I'm Jeff. I'm the new guy here. I thought we were just going to have coffee together, but you guys, you're right into it. So I'm glad I was a part of this and look forward to being a part in the future too.
Yeah,
There's
good to see you again, Jeff.
I just posted the Adidas life cycle, and they right front page and say take the test. So it's whether it's a series of questions where they are, and whether you're green and growing and old and aging is sort of where it comes down. So it's a really easy one for someone to do a kind of self-assessment. And listen, everybody anymore likes to do this self-assessment stuff. So, and then we're not necessarily in control of it, but at least they come back and gather more information.
Yeah, actually, not for this week, but maybe something to think about for next week. I'm just curious how many of these, all these tools you use prior to the engagement, as opposed to, post their commitment on the engagement, because it just seems that a lot of this is valuable, but just takes up a lot of time.
This is post stuff, this is as you get, deeper relationship, and you're starting to bring tools and resources to continue the conversation, to have them kind of understand their issues more distinctly. And if it's part of your strategic plan, then you ought to be able to, spend time there, educating them on, where they are, and, what what, if we're going to go, from adolescence to prime, we need more integration. Who's going to bring that? Who's going to be that integrator? Who's going to bring it all together to allow the founder to step back, right? So that's what I would take them through that exercise, moving them from this point in the life cycle to this point, and that's just a tool to communicate where we're going and how others have gotten there, because that's really where it comes down to. Can you take me somewhere that I can't go alone, and I feel comfortable that you can, navigate the waters, right?
Sure. That's great. point.
Joseph, one of the things that George did when we were down in Charleston is that on Wednesday afternoon, they were putting together a summary of all the different types of tools that our people are using. And right now, I thought he was going to be sending that out or putting it on Circle for us. But I think there were something like 15 to 20 different tools that were identified. Everything from financial tools to HR tools to marketing tools that various people have used over time and find very guiding and helpful. But 90% of the people all talk about, they do that after they've met with a prospect and are talking about the second time together. So they're more versed in the industry, and then where the individual firm may be in the industry based on answers they received in the initial conversation.
Got it.
Um,
Thank you.
for the rewilding tool, in detail, I use it post, but I also use it pre as a quick check, because once I know the number of employees in a company, I can quickly have a look at that tool and help my understanding of the company in terms of its issues and potential issues and problems and pain points.
It's kind of a pre-sales call prep, right? And so
right.
you have that in your back pocket.
Exactly.
And I don't know, but companies that I've experienced, I've worked with, or have kind of this set of issues. Does that any of those ring true to you? You try to get kind of so to prove that you did your homework and you're not just getting all the information straight away today, right?
Exactly, Joe. Exactly that.
Andy, I don't talk that way straight away. That's a British term, isn't it? Straight away. I'm working with Ed and I are working with another guy from, I think from England, and it's funny, you start picking up some local, colloquialisms, if you will.
You do, it's in my military days, I worked with the United States Air Force down in East Anglia, and the language barrier was quite formidable at times, even though some of us speak English, I don't know.
East Angola, was it? Or Angola?
I don't know where it went wrong. I don't know where it went wrong with you guys. I mean, we all worked for the same queen at one time, or the same king at one time.
I thought we still do.
All right, guys. I'll see you later.
All right, folks.
Okay, guys.
Have a great day.
I've got to hop
See you
off
next
too.
week.
Yeah, and me
See
too.
you all next week. Thanks, guys.
See you next week,
Take care.
guys. Thank
Yeah.
you. See you.
Thank you. Bye.